Hi, I'm Sarah Mahmood, a sophomore at Wellesley College and a student worker at the Wellesley Centers for Women. I'm here today with Dr. Rangita de Silva-De Alwis, Director of the Human Rights Policy Program at the Wellesley Centers for Women and the Director of Women in Public Service Projects at Wellesley College, which in 2012 will bring together 40 women leaders from the Arab world for an innovative leadership program. She has also convened the Rabat Roundtable on Women Leading Change in the Arab and Muslim World in Morocco in 2011, and today I'll be speaking to her about the effects of the Arab Spring on the women's movement. Thank you so much for being here, Rangita. One of the things that I know everyone is wondering about is just how women's roles have changed since the Arab Spring, especially compared to pre-revolution.
That's a very good question, Sarah. You know, something new happened during the Arab Spring, and women marched together with their brothers, and the genie can now never be put back. Mm-hmm. What was very important and transformative is that women were seen in the multiplicity of their roles. Mm-hmm. We no longer see Arab women in a one-dimensional way. We see women as mothers, as daughters, as sisters, as protesters, women who are veiled, women without their veils, women professionals, women religious leaders, all protesting and forging common cause to oust a dictator, to usher in democracy, to place women's rights at the center of the transformations taking place in the Arab world. So despite that enormous hope that we saw and the enormous dreams that we saw being envisioned on Tahrir Square and in the different squares of the Arab world, what we see also is that the promise of the Arab Revolution is being eroded. And this is such a shame given the fact that women were at the forefront of the revolutions. We saw in every part of the Arab world, we saw Facebook girl or Efra Farah who marched together with her brothers to Tahrir Square, better known as Facebook girl, who really was pivotal to the Egyptian revolution. We saw in Yemen Tawakkul Karman, who first led a demonstration on a university campus against the long rule of Ali Abdullah Saleh, and who, as we all know, while the world celebrated, was one of the 3 awardees of the Nobel Peace Prize in 2011 because of her work in the Arab Spring in Yemen. We saw in Libya how women's protests against Gaddafi really galvanized and mobilized the revolution. It is because of a young law student, Iman al-Obidi, who broke into a government press conference declaring that she had been raped by government troops, that her plight provoked mass demonstrations against the regime and against the rebel. And really, because of her claims, an investigation was initiated by the International Criminal Court in early June of 2011. And the ICC declared that the Libyan leader had ordered mass rapes as a weapon of war. So women were pivotal, were critical to the Arab revolutions. And we saw women in their many faceted roles. Mm-hmm. And we really saw women coming to their own during the Arab Spring. So I think the world will never be the same again because of the ways in which women claimed their place in the Arab Spring. But the challenge now is how do we sustain, how do we celebrate the spirit of the Arab Spring and make sure that it has multiplier impact on women's lives. Because just as much as these iconic women marched, protested, voiced their disapproval, we also see how women were brutalized in the aftermath. of the Arab Spring. Women were subjected to electric shocks, virginity testing, were beaten back. And I think it is very important that we not grow complacent about the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring has just begun. The journey continues, and it's a long journey that might end in the night or in the light, depending on the role that women will play. And women have played and can continue to play an enormously important role. And one of the ways in which women can play a role is by ensuring that gender equality is placed at the heart of the rule of law and the democratic processes that are being put in place. There are those big and small ways in which women can play a role. So apart from making sure that their voices are heard in institutional reform movements, women can also play a role in other ways. For example, social media was an important tool for women's empowerment during the Arab Spring, and women used their own capacity to use social media as a tool to bring together their brothers and sisters to protest. At the same time, what we find is in Egypt that in the aftermath, women were harassed and women's bodies were under threat, were under siege. And even during that period, women mobilized to create what is known as HarassMap, a mapping tool, a social media mapping tool that can identify areas or pockets where harassment or violence against women take place and can identify the harasser. So those social media tools have been very instrumental in identifying violence against women and can be used around the world as a way in which to address and to challenge violence against women. So I think women's roles are changing. They're changed. As I said, something magical took place. Something new took place during the Arab Spring. And the genie can never be put back. And the genie should never be put back. So the challenge is, how do we then really expand that magic? Make sure women are at the forefront. Because as I said before, juxtaposed with what happened during the Arab Spring, the paradox of that was that women soon after were marginalized. So women have to make sure that issues concerning women are put at the forefront of the reforms that are taking place, and that those cannot happen later. What is happening right now is they are being told democracy first, gender equality next. No, gender equality is at the heart of democracy. Exactly. So that has to be really made clear. And appropriate measures have been taken to make sure that women participate equally. And if that cannot happen naturally, what we have to do is create processes to ensure that women are at the table. And that can be done through a quota law. That can be done through substantive equality. The CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, calls for substantive equality, which means that it is not enough that women have equal opportunity, but that there should be equality of result, that the impact of laws and policies should affect both men and women equally. So to ensure substantive equality, the CEDAW calls for quotas, for temporary special measures to make sure that women's voices are heard. So temporary special measures, such as a minimum 30% quota for women in parliaments, in decision-making bodies, should be put in place so that you make sure that women sit at the table. And over time, those can be reviewed and revised and even removed. But right now, what is needed is that some kind of a process that puts women squarely at the table.